You want to know about power? True power isn't a gun. It isn't a bomb in a car or a threat whispered in a back alley. True power is waking up in a mansion that costs $6 million, in a bed with sheets made of Egyptian silk so fine they feel like water against your skin, and finding out that the devil has been in your room while you slept. And the devil, he has a sense of humor. Jack Woltz was a man who understood power, or thought he did. He was the head of International Motion Pictures. He made stars. He destroyed them. He was a god in the land of celluloid and painted backdrops. On this particular morning, the sun hadn't quite breached the horizon of Los Angeles. The light was gray, the color of old dishwater, filtering through the heavy velvet curtains of his master bedroom. Woltz was dreaming. In his dream, he was winning. He always won. But then, something pulled him out of the darkness. A smell. It wasn't the smell of his expensive cologne. It wasn't the smell of the starlet who had been in his bed the night before. She was long gone, ushered out by discreet servants. No, this smell was thick, copper, metallic. It tasted like a rusted penny placed on the back of your tongue. It was the smell of a butcher shop in August when the cooling fans break down. Woltz shifted. The silk sheets felt wrong. They were heavy, wet, sticky. He frowned, his eyes fluttering open. His hand moved across the mattress, expecting the cool smoothness of the fabric. Instead, his fingers sank into something warm and viscous. It was soaking through his pajamas, plastering the silk to his legs. He sat up, confused. The room was silent, too silent. The kind of silence that holds its breath before a scream. He looked down. In the dim gray light, the bed looked black. A dark, spreading stain covered the lower half of the mattress, soaking into the expensive duvet, pooling around his hips. He touched his hand to his face. It came away red. "Blood," he whispered. His voice was a dry croak. He scrambled backward, his heart hammering against his ribs like a trapped bird. He reached for the lamp on the nightstand, knocking over a bottle of sleeping pills. They rattled on the floor like dried bones. His hand found the switch. The light flooded the room, and Jack Woltz screamed. It wasn't a human sound. It was the sound of an animal whose soul has been ripped out. Because there, at the foot of his bed, tucked under the covers as if it were a sleeping lover, was a head. Not a human head. It was massive. The eyes were glassy, staring up at the ceiling with a look of terrified accusation. The tongue lolled out, purple and swollen. A jagged flap of skin hung from the neck where the axe, or the saw, had done its work. The white diamond star on the forehead was matted with gore. Khartoum. $600,000 of thoroughbred racehorse. The pride of his stable. The most beautiful animal in England. Decapitated, butchered, and delivered into his bed without a sound, without a whisper, past the guards, past the gates, past the dogs. Woltz scrambled back until his spine hit the headboard. He couldn't breathe. The smell was overpowering now, shit and blood and raw meat. He stared into the dead eyes of his prize horse, and in that moment, Jack Woltz understood. He realized that his power, his studio, his money, his political friends meant nothing, absolutely nothing, because the people who did this, They could have taken his head just as easily. They chose not to. They chose to leave him alive with the horror. They chose to let him scream until his throat bled. And scream he did. He screamed until the birds took flight from the trees outside. He screamed until the world knew that the Corleone family had made him an offer he couldn't refuse. But that was later. Or maybe it was earlier. Time is a funny thing when you deal in sins. To understand the blood in the bed, you have to understand the wedding. You have to go back to Long Island, to the last Saturday in August of 1945. The war was over. The Japanese had surrendered. The boys were coming home. And on the sprawling estate of Don Vito Corleone, the sun was beating down with a vindictive fury. It was 90 degrees in the shade, and the air was so thick with humidity you could practically chew it. It was Connie Corleone's wedding day, and by tradition, on the day of his daughter's wedding, a Sicilian father cannot refuse any request. The estate was a fortress disguised as a party. The high stone walls were patrolled by men in tuxedos whose pockets bulged with things that weren't cigarette cases. Inside, hundreds of guests swarmed like ants on a dropped lollipop. The air smelled of roasting peppers, sweet sausage, gallons of spilled wine, and the heavy, cloying scent of gardenias. An orchestra played a tarantella, the accordion wheezing like an old man with emphysema, driving the dancers into a frenzy. But while the music played outside, inside the dark, wood-paneled office of the Don, the air was cool, still, and heavy with dread. Amerigo Bonacera sat in front of the Don's desk. He was a small man, an undertaker by trade. He smelled of formaldehyde and fear. He was trembling, clutching his hat in his hands like it was a lifeline. He had spent a lifetime believing in America, in law, in order. And now he was sitting in the dark, asking for a favor from a man he had avoided for years. "I believe in America," Bonacera began. His voice shook. "America has made my fortune, and I raised my daughter in the American fashion. I gave her freedom, but I taught her never to dishonor her family." Don Vito Corleone sat behind his desk. He was not a tall man, but he seemed to fill the room. He wore a tuxedo that cost more than Bonacera made in a month, and on his lapel was a blood-red rose. He didn't look at Bonacera. He was busy. He was stroking a cat that had wandered onto his desk. A gray, battered tomcat with torn ears. The Don's hand, large, heavy, with square fingers, moved rhythmically over the animal's fur. Purr, purr, purr. The sound was loud in the quiet room. "She found a boyfriend," Bonacera continued, the words tumbling out now, fueled by his grief. "Not an Italian. She went to the movies with him. She stayed out late. 2 months ago he took her for a drive with another boy. They made her drink whiskey, and then they tried to take advantage of her." Bonacera swallowed hard. He could still see his daughter's face in the hospital, the bruising, the broken jaw, the way her eyes looked at nothing. "She resisted. She kept her honor. So they beat her, like an animal." He paused, tears leaking from his eyes. "When I went to the hospital, her nose was broken. Her jaw was shattered, held together with wire. She couldn't even weep because of the pain. But I wept. Why did I weep? She was the light of my life, Beautiful girl. Now she will never be beautiful again." The Don continued to stroke the cat. His face was a mask, an ancient, weary mask carved from olive wood. "I went to the police," Bonacera said, his voice turning bitter. "Like a good American. These 2 boys were brought to trial. The judge sentenced them to 3 years in prison. Suspended sentence. Suspended sentence! They went free that very day. I stood in the courtroom like a fool, and those 2 bastards, they smiled at me." Bonacera stood up. The rage was choking him. "I said to my wife, 'For justice, we must go to Don Corleone.'" The Don stopped petting the cat. He looked up. His eyes were dark, heavy-lidded, reptilian in their stillness. "Why did you go to the police?" The Don's voice was raspy, a sound like dry leaves scraping over concrete. "Why didn't you come to me first?" "What do you want of me?" Bonacera whispered. "Tell me anything, but do what I beg you to do." "What is that?" Bonacera leaned forward and whispered into the Don's ear. It was a request for death, a request for murder. The Don sighed. It was the sigh of a man who carries the weight of the world's sins. "That I cannot do." "I will give you anything you ask," Bonacera said desperately. "We have known each other many years," the Don said, his voice low. "But until this day, you never came to me for counsel or help. I can't remember the last time you invited me to your house for coffee, though my wife is godmother to your only child. Let us be frank. You spurned my friendship. You feared to be in my debt." "I didn't want to get into trouble," Bonacera mumbled. "No," the Don said gently. "You found America was a paradise. You had a good trade. You made a good living. The police protected you, and there were courts of law. You didn't need a friend like me. But now you come to me and you say, 'Don Corleone, give me justice.' And you ask without respect. You don't offer friendship. You don't even think to call me Godfather. Instead, you come into my house on the day my daughter is to be married, and you ask me to do murder for money." Bonacera felt the trap closing. He felt the coldness of the room seeping into his bones. "I ask you for justice." "That is not justice," the Don said. "Your daughter is alive." "Let them suffer then," Bonacera hissed, "as she suffers." He pulled out his wallet. "How much shall I pay you?" The silence that followed was terrifying. The Don turned away. He looked out the window at the bright, happy wedding. The cat jumped down from the desk. "Bonacera, Bonacera," the Don said, shaking his head. "What have I ever done to make you treat me so disrespectfully? If you had come to me in friendship, then this scum that ruined your daughter would be suffering this very day. And if by chance an honest man like yourself should make enemies, then they would become my enemies, and then they would fear you." Bonacera lowered his head. He understood now. It wasn't about money. It was about the soul. He had to sell a piece of his soul to buy justice. "Be my friend," Bonacera whispered. "Godfather." He took the Don's hand and kissed it. The skin was dry and warm. "Good," the Don said. He placed a hand on Bonacera's shoulder. "Someday, and that day may never come, I will call upon you to do a service for me. But until that day, accept this justice as a gift on my daughter's wedding day." Bonacera left, a ghost of a man, leaving behind the smell of fear. The Don turned to the man standing in the shadows, Tom Hagen, his consigliere, his adopted son. Hagen was Irish-German, a sharp contrast to the dark Sicilians. He was calm, efficient, a lawyer who knew where the bodies were buried because he had helped dig the holes. "Give this job to Clemenza," the Don said, his voice devoid of emotion. "I want reliable people. People who aren't going to get carried away. I mean, we're not murderers, despite what this undertaker thinks." He sniffed the rose on his lapel. "Break them," the Don said softly. "But do not kill them. We are not animals." Outside, the heat was unrelenting. The tarantella had ended, replaced by a slow, crooning love song. Michael Corleone sat at a table far from the main dais. He was the youngest son, the war hero. He wore his Marine Corps uniform, the olive-drab wool that must have been itching like hell in this heat, but he wore it like armor. He was different from his brothers. He had a face that was open, handsome, almost innocent. He didn't have the predator's look of Sonny, the eldest, or the weak, shifting eyes of Fredo, the middle brother. Sitting next to him was Kay Adams. Kay was America. She was New Hampshire. She was picket fences. She was Sunday school picnics. She wore a dress with a pattern of small flowers, and she looked at the chaotic, loud, passionate Italian wedding with a mixture of fascination and terror. She was a tourist in a zoo where the cages had been left unlocked. "That's your family?" she asked, watching a fat man dance with a glass of wine balanced on his head. "That's the family," Michael said. He was drinking water, always water. He kept his eyes moving, scanning the crowd, a soldier's habit. "Who is that?" Kay pointed. She was pointing at a man standing by the garden gate. He wasn't dancing. He wasn't eating. He was just standing there, a massive, hulking shape in a dark suit that looked like it was tailored for a gorilla. His face was a road map of violence. Scars, pockmarks, eyes that were flat and dead as sharks' eyes. He was muttering to himself, his lips moving silently. "That's Luca Brazzi," Michael said. His voice dropped an octave. Even saying the name seemed to lower the temperature at the table. "He looks scary," Kay whispered. "He is," Michael said. "He helps my father out sometimes." Kay looked at Michael. "Helps him how?" Michael hesitated. He looked at Kay, her clean, scrubbed face, her trusting eyes. He knew he should lie. He should tell her Luca was a bodyguard, a driver, anything. But the heat, the wine, the weird displacement of being back home after seeing men die in the Pacific, it made him reckless. "I'll tell you a story," Michael said, "about Luca and my father." He leaned in. 15 years ago, there was a guy named Johnny Fontaine. "The singer?" Kay's eyes went wide. "Johnny Fontaine is coming here?" "He's my father's godson. Anyway, back then, Johnny was just starting out. He was in a band with a leader named Les Halley. Johnny wanted to go solo. Halley wouldn't let him out of his contract. So Johnny came to my father." Michael took a sip of water. He watched Luca Brazzi practicing his speech to the Don. The giant man looked terrified, not of death, but of messing up his lines. My father went to see this band leader. He offered him $10,000 to let Johnny go. Hallie said no. The next day, my father went back. Only this time he had Luca Brasi with him. Within an hour, the band leader signed the release for a certified check of $1,000. Kay frowned, doing the math. But how? Michael looked at her, his face completely serious. My father made him an offer he couldn't refuse. What was that? Luca Brasi held a gun to his head, Michael said flatly, and my father assured him that either his brains or his signature would be on the contract. Kay stared at him. She laughed, a nervous twittering sound. That's a true story? That's a true story, Michael said. He didn't smile. Kay looked back at Luca Brasi. The monster was moving now, lumbering toward the Don's office. He walked with a heavy, flat-footed gait, like something made of clay and old stone. Michael, she said softly, that's not you. That's your family, but it's not you. Michael took her hand. His palm was dry. I know. That's why I'm telling you, Kay. That's my family, not me. I have my own plans. But as he said it, a shadow passed over the table. Sonny Corleone, the heir apparent. He was big, loud, brimming with sexual energy and violence. He slammed a hand on Michael's shoulder. Mikey, you look like a damn recruiting poster. You scaring the girl? Sonny grinned at Kay. It was a wolf's grin. Don't listen to him, honey. He's a hero, a war hero. The Marines made a man out of him. Sonny squeezed Michael's shoulder hard, too hard. It was a gesture of love, but in the Corleone family, love always came with bruises. Pop wants to see you later, Sonny whispered, the grin fading for a second. And the singer is here. Johnny's here. A roar went up from the crowd. Women started screaming. The orchestra stopped the tarantella and swung into a cheesy, slow ballad. Johnny Fontaine had arrived. He looked like $1,000,000. Tan, slicked-back hair, a smile that could melt butter. But if you looked close, you could see the cracks, the lines around the eyes, the slight tremor in the hand holding the cigarette. Johnny was fading. His voice was going. His career was on the skids. He wasn't here just to sing for Connie. He was here to beg, just like Bonacera. The wedding was a marketplace, a bazaar of favors, and the Don sat in his dark room, the spider at the center of the web, waiting for the flies to come and ask to be saved. Night had fallen. The lanterns were lit, casting long, dancing shadows across the lawn. The cake had been cut. The bride and groom had left. But the real work was just beginning. In the Don's office, the atmosphere was different now. The family was gathered. Tom Hagen sat by the drink cart, nursing a scotch. Sonny was pacing, unable to sit still. Michael sat in the corner, silent, watching. And Johnny Fontaine was crying. He was sobbing, actually. A grown man, a star, weeping into his hands. "I don't know what to do, Godfather," Johnny blubbered. My voice, it's weak. I can't sing the high notes anymore. And this guy, this Jack Woltz, he won't give me the part. It's the role of a lifetime. It would win me the Oscar. It would save me." Don Corleone stood up. The movement was sudden, violent. He grabbed Johnny by the shoulders and shook him. "You can act like a man," the Don roared. The slap echoed in the room. "What's the matter with you? Is this how you turned out? A Hollywood Pinocchio that cries like a woman?" Johnny sniffled, shocked into silence. The Don mimicked him, his voice high and mocking. "Oh, what do I do? What do I do?" The Don let him go. He smoothed his tuxedo jacket. He was calm again instantly. The rage was a tool, just like the kindness. "You look terrible," the Don said. "You want to look like a boss? You have to rest. You have to eat. Spend time with your family." He paused, looking around the room at his sons. "Because a man who doesn't spend time with his family can never be a real man." Johnny nodded, wiping his eyes. "But Woltz, he hates me. I slept with one of his girls years ago. He calls me an olive oil voice. He says I'll never work in his studio." The Don walked back to his desk. He sat down slowly. The leather chair creaked. "You're worried about this director?" "Producer," Johnny corrected. "He's the head of the studio." "This producer," the Don said, dismissing the title with a wave of his hand. "He's a businessman. I'll make him an offer he can't refuse." He turned to Tom Hagen. "Tom," the Don said, "you need to go to California. Tonight." Hagen nodded. He didn't ask why. He didn't ask how. "I'll leave right after the family dinner." "Speak to this Woltz," the Don instructed. "Reason with him. Tell him Johnny is my godson. Tell him it is a personal favor to me. But if he is stubborn—" The Don didn't finish the sentence. He didn't have to. The scene shifts to Tom Hagen. Hagen flew to Los Angeles. He didn't look like a mobster. He looked like a generic American lawyer. Soft face, quiet voice. He checked into a hotel, showered, and went to International Motion Pictures. Jack Woltz made him wait for 4 hours. When Woltz finally saw him, he was rude, dismissive. "I don't care who your boss is," Woltz barked, chomping on a cigar. "Johnny Fontaine is dead in this town. You hear me? Dead!" Hagen didn't blink. He sat there, calm as a pond. "My client is a man who insists on hearing bad news immediately." Woltz laughed. "You tell your boss that Jack Woltz doesn't get pushed around by a bunch of Guinea thugs." Hagen stood up. "I admire your pictures very much, Mr. Woltz. I'm sorry we couldn't make a deal." But Woltz was smart enough to know when he had pushed too far. Or maybe he just wanted to show off. He invited Hagen to dinner at his estate, to show him the wealth, to show him the power. After a dinner of veal and expensive wine, Woltz took Hagen to the stables. The air was cool and smelled of hay and manure, a clean, honest smell compared to the studio. "This is Khartoum," Woltz said, stroking the nose of the magnificent stallion. The horse's coat shone like polished obsidian under the stable lights. $600,000. I'm going to race him next year. He's not just a horse. He's art. Woltz turned to Hagen, his face twisting with sudden venom. Now you listen to me. I know who your boss is. I checked. Vito Corleone. Yeah, I heard stories. But you tell him this. Johnny Fontaine never gets that movie. That Johnny, he ruined a girl I was training. A girl who was going to be the biggest star in the world. He made her look ridiculous. I don't forget that. Walt stepped closer, jabbing a finger into Hagen's chest. You tell your boss that he can ask all he wants, but the answer is no. Now get the hell off my property. Hagen nodded. He didn't argue. He didn't threaten. He just looked at the horse one last time. Thank you for the dinner, Hagen said softly. Mr. Corleone insists on bad news being delivered quickly. Hagen left. He took a plane back to New York, and in the dark hours of the morning, while Jack Wolt slept the sleep of the arrogant, the Corleone family went to work. Luca Brazzi was dispatched. Not to kill a man. That would be too simple, too quick. The Don wanted to send a message that spoke a language older than words. It involved a stable hand who was paid off to look the other way. It involved a heavy, sharp axe. It involved a strength that could sever the thick, muscular neck of a beast in a few brutal swings. And it involved a silent entry into a bedroom. The scream we heard earlier? That was the sound of a business deal being concluded. When the phone rang in the Corleone house the next day, Tom Hagen picked it up. He listened for a moment. A small smile touched his lips. He says Johnny has the part, Hagen told the Don. The Don was in his garden, pruning tomatoes. He was wearing old clothes, a shapeless hat on his head. He looked like a peasant. He snipped a dead leaf off a vine. Good, the Don said. Now, we have other business. Sollozzo. The Turk. The name hung in the air like a cloud of mustard gas. Virgil Sollozzo, a man with a knife in his smile and heroin in his pocket. He had requested a meeting, and with that name, the real war began. The wedding was over, the honeymoon was ending, and the winter of the Corleone family was about to set in. If Vito Corleone was the old world, wine, gambling, favors, unions, Virgil Sollozzo was the new. He was called the Turk because he had spent years in the poppy fields of Turkey. He wasn't a mustache Pete. He was a businessman of the future, and the future was white powder. The meeting took place in the Don's office, but the atmosphere had shifted. The air wasn't heavy with tradition anymore. It was electric with greed. Sollozzo was a good-looking man, deep eyes, a nose that looked like it had been broken once and set by a master surgeon. He sat opposite the Don. Sonny was there. Tom Hagen was there. I need $2 million cash, Sollozzo said. He spoke softly, but his words hit the table like lead weights. And I need your political protection, the judges, the politicians. In exchange, I give you 30% of the profits. The Don listened. He sat like a stone idol. In the first year, Sollozzo continued, his eyes gleaming, your share would be $3, maybe $4 million, and it will grow. Sonny moved, just a twitch, a shifting of his weight. He was doing the math. Narcotics. It was dirty, yes, but the money was astronomical. And what is the risk? The Don asked. The risk is minimal, Sollozzo said, if we have your protection. The Don leaned back, He took a sip of anisette. The silence stretched. You could hear the grandfather clock ticking in the hall. Tick, tock. Life, death. "I must say no to you, Sollozzo," the Don said finally. Sollozzo didn't flinch, but the light in his eyes hardened. "May I ask why?" "It is true I have many friends in politics," the Don said. "But they would not remain friendly if they knew my business was drugs. Gambling, they view that as a harmless vice. Even women. Liquor. These are things people want. But drugs? Drugs are a dirty business." The Don's voice became stern. "It would be dangerous. It would destroy us in the end. I cannot do it." Sollozzo nodded slowly. He looked disappointed, but not defeated. He started to gather his papers. Then Sonny spoke. "So you're saying," Sonny blurted out, "that the Tattaglia family guarantees your investment?" It was a mistake. A fatal, catastrophic mistake. The room froze. Hagen closed his eyes briefly. The Don's head snapped toward his son. One look, just one look of pure, cold fury. Sonny realized what he had done. He had shown his hand. He had shown Sollozzo that the Corleone family was divided, that the Don said no, but the heir said maybe. "I have a weakness for my children," the Don said to Sollozzo, his voice smooth as oil, trying to cover the crack in the armor. "I spoil them, as you can see. They talk when they should listen." But the damage was done. Sollozzo stood up. He bowed. "I accept your decision, Don Corleone." He walked out, but as he left, Sollozzo wasn't looking at the Don anymore. He was looking at Sonny. And in that look, there was a calculation, a math equation being solved. If the old man says no, and the young man wants to say yes, then the old man is just an obstacle. After the door closed, the Don turned to Sonny. "What is the matter with you?" The Don's voice was a whip crack. "I think your brain is going soft from all that comedy you play with that young girl." Sonny looked down at his shoes, shame burning his face. "Never tell anyone outside the family what you are thinking," the Don hissed. "Never." He turned to Hagen. "Send Luca Brazzi to me. I want him to go to the Tattaglias. Pretend he is unhappy with our family. I want to know what Sollozzo is planning underneath." It was a smart move, a chess move. But Sollozzo was playing a different game. He wasn't playing chess. He was playing executioner. December came, Christmas in New York. The city was dressed in lights. Snow fell, covering the grime of the streets with a deceptive white blanket. Bing Crosby was singing White Christmas on every radio. But the streets were cold. Michael and Kay were Christmas shopping. They were laughing, eating roasted chestnuts, acting like a normal couple. They didn't know that 3 blocks away, a car was idling. Don Corleone had a routine. Every day he went to his office in Little Italy, Genco olive oil. After work he would stop at a fruit stand to buy oranges. Oranges. In the language of the Corleones, oranges were an omen, a harbinger of death. The Don stepped out of his office building. The winter air bit at his cheeks. He crossed the street to the fruit stand. The vendor, a man he had known for 20 years, rushed to help him. "Some nice oranges today, Don Corleone," the man said. "Give me 2, the Don rasped. He pointed. "That one, and that one." He took the paper bag. He turned to walk back to his car. Fredo was waiting in the driver's seat. Fredo, the weak son. Two men in long coats stepped out of the shadows. They didn't speak. They didn't hesitate. They raised their hands, and the street lights glinted off the black metal of .38 revolvers. The Don saw them. He dropped the oranges. They rolled across the gray slush like bright, severed heads. He didn't run for the car. He ran toward the corner, trying to draw fire away from Fredo, trying to save his son even as the bullets tore into him. Bang, 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 bang. 5 shots. The Don stumbled. The pain was a hot, searing poker in his back, his chest. He fell onto the hood of his car, then slid down to the wet pavement. Fredo got out of the car. He was fumbling with his gun. He dropped it. He was crying. He sat on the curb, wailing, while his father lay in a pool of blood and crushed oranges. The shooters vanished into the crowd. The king is dead. Long live the king. Or so they thought, because Vito Corleone was made of tougher stuff than they knew. He lay there, gasping, pink froth bubbling on his lips, staring up at the gray winter sky. The snow fell on his face, melting on his warm skin. He held on. And across town, Michael Corleone saw the headline on a newspaper stand. Vito Corleone shot. The world tilted on its axis. The innocent Marine, the boy who wanted no part of the business, felt something click inside his chest, a lock turning, a door opening into a dark room he had been avoiding his whole life. He dropped his packages. He looked at Kay, and his eyes were no longer the eyes of a civilian. They were the eyes of a Corleone. "I have to go," he said, and the descent began. But before the sun could descend, the monster had to die. To understand the silence that fell over the Corleone empire that night, you have to look into the shadows of the Blue Grotto nightclub, where Luca Brasi went to meet his fate. Luca wasn't a man who believed in traps. He was the trap. He walked into the club like a tank rolling over a flower bed, his massive frame displacing the smoke and the stale air. He was there to pretend to betray the Don, to lure Sollozzo into a false sense of security. But Sollozzo had eyes that saw through stone. The meeting was short. Bruno Tattaglia, the pimp, the man who sold women like cattle, offered Luca a drink. Luca declined. He wanted to get to the point. He wanted to know about the money. Sollozzo smiled, that tight, reptile smile. 50,000, he said, to start. Luca nodded. He pretended to be greedy. It was the only emotion he knew how to fake, besides rage. "I'm in," Luca grunted. Sollozzo reached out his hand to shake. Luca took it. And then the world turned upside down. Bruno Tattaglia grabbed Luca's other arm. He pinned it to the bar. Sollozzo didn't shake. He pulled a knife. A stiletto, thin and wicked as a viper's fang. He slammed it down, thwack, right through the back of Luca's hand, pinning it to the mahogany wood. Luca roared. It was a sound of pure animal fury. But before he could rip his hand free, the garrote wire slipped over his neck from behind. A assassin, unseen in the shadows, tightened the loop. The wire bit into the thick flesh of Luca's throat. It cut off the roar. It cut off the air. Luca Brasi, the man who made grown men wet themselves with a look, began to die. His eyes bulged. His face turned purple, then black. He thrashed, his legs kicking over the bar stools, his pinned hand tearing at the wood. But the wire held. The darkness rushed in, not like a friend, but like a tidal wave. And the last thing Luca Brasi saw was Sollozzo taking a drag of his cigarette, watching him expire with the mild interest of a scientist watching a bug under a magnifying glass. While Luca cooled on the floor of the Blue Grotto, Michael arrived at the hospital. It was late. The corridors of French hospital were dim, lit by flickering fluorescent tubes that buzzed like trapped flies. The smell hit him first: antiseptic, floor wax, and underneath it all, the faint, sweet copper scent of old blood. It was the smell of a place where people came to leave the world. Michael walked down the hall toward room 28. It was quiet. Too quiet. There were supposed to be detectives guarding the door. There were supposed to be Corleone men, Clemenza's button men, standing watch. But the hallway was empty, a ghost town. The only sound was the squeak of Michael's shoes on the linoleum. He reached the door. His heart was hammering against his ribs, a frantic rhythm that reminded him of the artillery barrages in the Pacific. He pushed the door open. The room was dark. There, in the bed, lay his father. Vito Corleone looked small. The tubes running into his nose and arms made him look like a broken machine. His chest rose and fell with a shallow, rattling rasps. He was alone, unguarded, a sitting duck in a shooting gallery. Michael felt a coldness wash over him. It wasn't fear. It was clarity. The clarity of the battlefield. He realized then that the police weren't just incompetent. They were paid off. McCluskey, the police captain, had cleared the guards. The hitmen were coming back to finish the job. "Pop," Michael whispered. He touched his father's hand. It was warm. "Pop, it's me, Michael. I'm here." The Don's eyes fluttered open. They were hazy with morphine, but a spark of recognition and panic flared in them. A tear leaked from the corner of his eye, tracking through the stubble on his cheek. He tried to speak, but only a groan came out. "Don't worry," Michael said, his voice steady. "I'm not going to let anything happen to you. I'm going to move you." He needed help. He found a nurse in the station reading a romance novel. She was annoyed. "You can't go in there," she snapped. "Visiting hours are over." "My father is in danger," Michael said. He didn't shout. He didn't have to. The look in his eyes made the nurse drop her book. "We need to move him, now, to another room." They wheeled the bed down the hall, hiding the Don in an empty room around the corner. Michael stood in the dark, listening. He heard the elevator ding, footsteps, but it wasn't the killers. It was Enzo. Enzo the banker, a fat, trembling little man who had come to pay his respects to the Godfather who had saved his immigration status years ago. He was holding a bouquet of wilted flowers and shaking like a leaf in a hurricane. "Enzo," Michael said, stepping out of the shadows. The baker nearly jumped out of his skin. "Get out of here. There's going to be trouble." "Trouble?" Enzo stammered. "For the Godfather? I stay. I help."
Michael looked at him. The man was terrified, but he was loyal. "Okay, go outside. Stand in front of the hospital. Act like you've got a gun in your pocket. Can you do that?" They went outside. The winter air was biting.
They stood under the street lamp, the mist swirling around them. Michael lit a cigarette. He offered one to Enzo. The baker tried to light it, but his hands were shaking so badly the lighter clicked and sparked uselessly against his thumb. Michael took the lighter. He flicked it. The flame was steady, rock steady. He looked at his own hand. It wasn't trembling, not even a tremor. He stared at the flame. He realized, with a jolt of horror and fascination, that he was made for this. He wasn't the mathematician. He wasn't the civilian. He was his father's son. A car pulled up, black sedan, slow, predatory. It slowed down as it passed the hospital entrance. The windows rolled down. Michael thrust his hand into his coat pocket, mimicking the shape of a gun. Enzo did the same, his face pale as dough. The men in the car looked. They saw two guards. They saw the defiance. The car accelerated and sped away into the night. Michael exhaled smoke. "They're gone," he said. But the night wasn't over. Sirens wailed. Police cars screeched to a halt. And out of the lead car stepped Captain Mark McCluskey. McCluskey was a slab of a man. Irish, red-faced, a neck like a bull. He smelled of whiskey and cheap steak. He saw Michael and grinned, but it wasn't a friendly grin. It was the grin of a man who enjoys breaking things. "What the hell are you doing here, kid?" McCluskey barked. "I thought I cleared this place." "You did," Michael said quietly. "You cleared it so Sollozzo could come and kill my father." The accusation hung in the frozen air. McCluskey's face turned a darker shade of crimson. "You little punk. I ought to lock you up for obstruction." "How much is the Turk paying you, Captain?" Michael asked. That was it. McCluskey didn't arrest him. He swung. It was a heavy, clumsy blow, but it had the weight of the law behind it. His fist connected with Michael's jaw. Crack. The sound of bone fracturing was loud, sickening. Michael spun and hit the pavement. Pain exploded in his head, a white-hot star of agony. His mouth filled with blood. He tried to get up, but the world was spinning. "Hold him up!" McCluskey shouted to his cops. But before they could do more damage, Tom Hagen arrived with a squad of private detectives legally licensed to carry weapons. The standoff ended, but the damage was done. Michael Corleone had a broken face, and he had a broken illusion. The law wasn't a shield. It was just another weapon, sold to the highest bidder. Back at the Corleone Mall, the atmosphere was grim. The Don was alive, brought home in an ambulance, but he was weak. Sonny was in charge, and Sonny was a brush fire waiting for a wind. They sat in the study, Sonny, Tom Hagen, Clemenza, Tessio, and Michael, his jaw wired shut, his face swollen and purple like a bruised plum. A package arrived. It was wrapped in brown paper. Sonny tore it open. Inside was Luca Brazzi's bulletproof vest. Wrapped inside the vest was a dead fish, a large, slimy mackerel, its eyes clouded in death. "What the hell is this?" Sonny asked. "It's a Sicilian message," Clemenza said softly. It means Luca Brazzi sleeps with the fishes." The room went silent. Luca was their tank, their monster, and he was gone. "We hit 'em," Sonny raged, pacing the room. "We hit the Tatalias. We hit Sollozzo. We burn it all down." "We can't," Tom Hagen said, his voice the voice of reason. "Sollozzo is guarded by McCluskey, a police captain. Nobody kills a cop, Sonny. It's suicide. It would bring down the heat of the whole world. The other families will turn against us. We'll lose our political connections." Sonny slammed his fist on the desk. "So what? We let them kill Pop? We let them kill Mike?" Michael sat in the corner, nursing a glass of juice through a straw. The pain in his jaw was a constant, throbbing drumbeat. Throb, throb, throb. It synced with the beating of his heart. He listened to them argue. He listened to the fear in Tom's voice and the recklessness in Sonny's. He stood up. "I'll kill them," Michael said. The words came out mumbled through the wires, but they were clear enough. Sonny stopped pacing. He looked at his little brother. He started to laugh. "You? The college boy? You're going to kill Sollozzo and a police captain? What are you going to do, Mikey? Bore them to death with your math homework?" Michael didn't blink. His eyes were dark pools. "It's not personal, Sonny. It's strictly business. They want to kill Pop. They tried to kill me. If we don't kill Sollozzo, he'll keep coming. And McCluskey, he's not a cop, not really. He's a businessman with a badge. He's in the game. And in the game, you can kill anyone." He looked at Tom. "We get the newspaper people on the payroll to write stories. Stories about a corrupt police captain, a captain linked to drug dealers. We make it public. We dirty him up. Then, nobody cares if he dies." The room was silent again, but this time it was a respectful silence. They looked at Michael, and they didn't see the war hero or the college boy. They saw the dawn. They saw the same cold, calculating intelligence that had built the empire. Sonny stopped laughing. He walked over to Michael and touched his swollen face gently. "You really want to do this, kid?" "They want a meeting," Michael said. "Sollozzo wants a truce. He wants to talk to me. Set it up. Tell them I'll come. But tell them I want it in a public place, a restaurant, somewhere safe." Clemenza nodded. "I'll get a gun, a .38 special. I'll tape the handle and the trigger, no prints. We'll plant it in the bathroom of the restaurant. You go in, you eat, you ask to go to the John. You come out, and you blast them. 2 shots in the head apiece. Then you drop the gun and walk out. You don't run, you walk." "Where do I go after?" Michael asked. "Sicily," Hagen said. "We'll get you out of the country. You stay there until things cool down. A year. Maybe 2. Michael nodded. He was trading his life. He was trading Kay, his future, his soul, for his father. The meeting was set. Louis' restaurant in the Bronx. Best veal in the city. Sollozzo felt safe there. It was his territory. The night of the meeting, Michael sat in the car with Clemenza. The fat man was sweating, but he was happy. He was teaching the young prince how to kill. "Remember," Clemenza said, "you come out blasting. Don't look 'em in the eye. Look at their foreheads. And drop the gun. Don't take it with you. Drop the cannoli. Take the gun. No, wait, that's the other thing. Just drop the gun, Mikey. Michael got out of the car. The street was wet with rain. The neon sign of the restaurant buzzed red and ominous. Louis. He walked in. Sollozzo was waiting at a table in the back. McCluskey was with him, tucking a napkin into his collar, ready to devour a plate of spaghetti. Michael sat down. McCluskey patted him down. He felt the chest, the legs. He didn't check the ankles. He didn't find a gun, because there was no gun. Yet. "I'm glad you came, Mike," Sollozzo said. He spoke in Italian, fast, urgent. "I respect your father, but he is old. His thinking is old. We need peace, but I need assurance." Michael listened. He felt like he was underwater. The sounds of the restaurant, clinking silverware, laughter, the sizzle of garlic and oil, seemed miles away. All he could hear was his own blood rushing in his ears. "I need to go to the bathroom," Michael said. McCluskey looked up from his veal. "Go ahead, but don't take too long. I know you ain't got a weapon, kid. I checked." Michael stood up. His legs felt heavy. He walked to the back. He pushed open the bathroom door. It smelled of urine and disinfectant cakes. He went to the toilet tank. He reached behind it. His fingers brushed against cold porcelain. Nothing. Panic flared, a cold spike in his gut. Had Clemenza failed? Then, tape. The rough texture of tape, and the cold steel of the revolver. He ripped it loose. He checked the cylinder. Full. He took a breath. He looked in the mirror. The face staring back at him was a stranger with bruised skin and dead eyes. He walked out. He didn't go back to his seat. He walked toward the table. Sollozzo was talking to McCluskey. He started to turn. Michael raised his arm. The gun felt heavy, yet weightless. Bang! The shot hit Sollozzo in the forehead. A small red dot appeared. Then the back of his head exploded in a mist of pink and gray. He slumped forward into his pasta. McCluskey stared. His fork was halfway to his mouth. He didn't understand. His brain couldn't process that the college boy had just executed a man. Michael turned the gun. Bang! Bang! The first shot hit McCluskey in the throat. He gurgled, clutching his neck, blood spurting through his thick fingers. The second shot took him in the forehead. He fell back, his chair tipping over with a crash. The restaurant erupted. Screams, people diving under tables. Michael stood there for a second. The smoke from the gun drifted up, acrid and biting. He looked at the bodies, the meat. Drop the gun, Michael. His hand was frozen. He was clutching the weapon like a lifeline. Drop it. He opened his hand. The gun clattered to the floor. He turned and walked out. He didn't run. He walked. Past the screaming patrons, past the waiters, out into the cool, rainy night. He got into the waiting car. It sped away. Michael Corleone looked out the window. The city blurred past him. The lights, the people, the life he used to know. It was all gone. He was crossing the ocean now, not to Sicily, but to a darker place, a place from which there was no return. New York exploded. It wasn't a war of armies. It was a war of ghosts. Men disappeared from street corners. Cars exploded when ignitions were turned. The newspapers called it the War of the Five Families. But for the soldiers on the ground, it was simply going to the mattresses. It meant sleeping on stained cushions in safe houses that smelled of stale garlic and fear, cleaning guns until your fingers bled, and waiting for the phone to ring. While the city bled, Michael Corleone walked through a different kind of heat. Sicily, the land of his fathers. It was a place where time didn't just stand still, it rotted in the sun. The air smelled of lemons, sulfur, and goat dung. He walked the dusty hills with two bodyguards, Fabrizio and Carlo, carrying shotguns, lupara, slung over their shoulders like farming tools. Here, murder wasn't business. It was poetry. It was vendetta. He felt like a man walking through a dream. The violence of the restaurant felt 1,000,000 miles away, replaced by the droning of cicadas and the relentless Mediterranean sun. And then the thunderbolt struck. The colpo di fulmine. He saw her walking on a country road. Apollonia. She wasn't just beautiful. She was an ancient thing, a creature made of olive skin and dark eyes that held the secrets of 1,000 years. She wore a simple dress, and she carried a basket, but she walked like a queen. Michael stopped. His heart, which had been frozen since the restaurant, suddenly beat with a painful, terrifying rhythm. He courted her the old way. He spoke to her father, a man who looked at Michael with suspicion, but respected the name Corleone. The wedding followed quickly. It was a rustic affair, stripped of the glamour of Long Island, but rich in something else, a primal, possessive joy. Michael thought he had found peace. He thought he could hide in these hills forever, forgetting the gun in the bathroom, forgetting the blood on the veal. But the devil has a long reach. Back in America, the center was not holding. Sonny Corleone was a wartime don, and he ruled with a heavy hand. He was ferocious, brilliant in a fight, but he had a flaw. A crack in the foundation. His rage. It was a living thing, a beast that lived just under his skin, waiting to be let out. And Carlo Rizzi knew how to open the cage. Carlo, the husband of Connie Corleone, was a small man with big ambitions. He had married into royalty, but he felt like a servant. He resented the Corleones. He resented Connie. And when a weak man resents, he hurts. It was a stifling afternoon in their Hell's Kitchen apartment. The air was thick with the smell of boiling pasta and cheap wine. Connie asked a simple question about dinner. Carlo exploded. It wasn't an argument, it was a beatdown. He hit her with his fists. He hit her with a belt. He treated the sister of the Don like a punching bag, taking out all his inadequacy on her flesh. When the phone rang at the Corleone Mall, Sonny answered. He heard Connie's voice, broken, sobbing, hysterical. "He hit me, Sonny. He beat me up again. I'm bleeding." The beast woke up. Sonny didn't think. He didn't plan. He didn't call his bodyguards. He didn't wait for Clemenza. He saw only red. A curtain of blood descended over his eyes. He grabbed his jacket. He grabbed a .38 revolver. He ran out of the house, ignoring Tom Hagen's shout, ignoring the guards. He jumped into his car, A 1941 Lincoln Continental, a tank of a car. He peeled out of the driveway, gravel spraying like buckshot. He drove like a madman, tearing through the quiet streets of Long Island, heading for the city, heading for Carlo. He was going to kill him. He was going to beat him into a stain on the floor. But Carlo Rizzi wasn't just a wife-beater. He was bait. Barzini, the head of the rival family, had set the trap. He knew Sonny's temper. He knew that the only way to get the bull of the Corleones out of his fortress was to wave a red flag. And Connie was the flag. Sonny hit the Jones Beach Causeway. He was speeding, weaving through traffic, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. He approached the toll booths. The sun was glinting off the metal of the booths, blindingly bright. He slowed down. The lane he chose was empty. He fumbled for a coin. He didn't notice that the toll collector dropped out of sight. He didn't notice that the other lanes were empty. He didn't notice the big truck pulling up ahead, blocking the road. Then the world disintegrated. From the toll booths, men stood up, 4 of them, Thompson submachine guns, the Chicago typewriter. Sonny looked up. He saw the barrels, black eyes staring at him. He didn't have time to reach for his gun. He didn't have time to scream. The sound was deafening, a roar like the end of the world. The windshield shattered into 1,000 diamonds. The metal of the car screamed as hundreds of .45 caliber slugs tore through it. Sonny's body danced. It was a grotesque, jerky puppet dance. The bullets ripped through his chest, his arms, his face. Blood sprayed the interior of the car, painting the leather upholstery in horrific, abstract art. He tried to open the door. He actually managed to crawl out, half of his face gone, his suit shredded to ribbons. He stood on the pavement for a second, a monster refusing to die, roaring in silent agony. One of the gunmen walked up, calm, professional. He aimed a kick at Sonny's face. Then he leveled a shotgun and fired into the mass of meat that used to be Santino Corleone. Sonny fell. He hit the asphalt hard. He didn't move. The blood pooled around him, thick and dark, expanding like a shadow in the midday sun. The gunman jumped into a car and sped away. The truck moved. Silence returned to the causeway, broken only by the hissing of the Lincoln's radiator and the distant cry of a seagull. Tom Hagen got the call. He had to be the one, the bearer of bad news, the Grim Reaper's messenger. Don Vito was back home. He was frail, recovering from the 5 bullets in his chest. He sat in his garden, drinking wine, staring at the tomatoes. He looked old. The power was still there, but it was dim, like a dying coal. Hagen walked into the room. He poured a drink. His hands were shaking. He downed it. "Tom?" The Don's voice was raspy. "What is it?" Hagen couldn't look him in the eye. "They shot Sonny." The Don didn't scream. He didn't cry. He seemed to shrink. He closed his eyes, and a single tremor passed through his body, as if an earthquake had happened deep underground. "Is he dead?" "Yes, Godfather." "And Michael?" "We have no word on Michael, but we have to assume he is in danger too." The Don opened his eyes. They were wet, but they were clear. The grief was there, massive and crushing, but the mind was working. The strategist was back. "I want no acts of vengeance," the Don said softly. "I want you to arrange a meeting with the heads of the 5 families. I want to end this war. I want to bring Michael home." He stood up, leaning heavily on his desk. "Look how they massacred my boy," he whispered. And in Sicily, the other shoe dropped. Michael was preparing to leave. The heat was on. He had to move Michael and Apollonia to a safer villa. He sat in the car, waiting for her. She was driving. She wanted to show him she could drive. "Fabrizio!" Michael shouted. "Where are you going?" His bodyguard, Fabrizio, was walking away from the car, fast. He wasn't looking back. Michael looked at the car. He looked at Apollonia, smiling behind the wheel, adjusting her veil. And he knew. The instinct that had saved him at the hospital screamed at him now. "No! Apollonia! No!" He scrambled out of his seat. He started to run toward the car. "No! Don't start the car!" Apollonia turned the key. The explosion shook the hills. A ball of orange fire consumed the Alfa Romeo. Metal twisted. Glass turned to dust. The force of the blast threw Michael backward into the dirt. He lay there, stunned, his ears ringing, watching the black smoke rise into the blue Sicilian sky. The bomb was meant for him. But it took the innocent. It took the beauty. Michael Corleone lay in the dust, and the last piece of his heart turned to stone. The boy was dead. The lover was dead. Only the Don remained. He returned to America a year later. He was different. He wore a suit that was black, always black. His face was a mask that never slipped. He reunited with Kay. He told her he loved her, but his eyes were cold. He told her the business would be legitimate in 5 years. It was a lie, but it was a necessary lie. The Don made peace. He swore on the souls of his grandchildren that he would not seek vengeance for Sonny as long as Michael was allowed to return safely. It was a surrender, or so it seemed. But Vito Corleone played the long game. He taught Michael. Every day in the garden, amidst the tomato plants and the smell of earth, the old lion taught the young lion how to hunt. "Keep your friends close, but your enemies closer," the Don whispered. "Never hate your enemies. It affects your judgment." Time passed. The Don grew older. He retired. Michael became the head of the family. He was ruthless. He was efficient. He cut the dead wood. He pushed Tom Hagen out, making him just a lawyer. "You're not a wartime consigliere, Tom," Michael said. It broke Tom's heart. But Michael didn't care about hearts. He cared about survival. And then the day came. The day the old lion finally lay down. It wasn't a bullet. It wasn't a knife. It was a game. Don Vito was in the garden. He was playing with his grandson, Anthony. He put an orange peel in his mouth, making a monster face to scare the boy. The boy laughed. The Don laughed. And then he grabbed his chest. It was a massive heart attack. He collapsed among the tomato vines, the smell of the earth rising up to meet him. He died not as a gangster, but as a grandfather, under the open sky. At the funeral, the enemies gathered. Barzini, Tartaglia. They came to pay respects, but they were circling like vultures. They saw Michael. They saw a young, inexperienced man. They thought he was weak. Tessio, the old capo regime, approached Michael. "Barzini wants a meeting," Tessio said. He says we can straighten everything out. I can set it up, on my territory, in Brooklyn, where you'll be safe." Michael looked at Tessio. He looked at the man who had held him as a baby, and he knew. The Don had warned him. "Whoever comes to you with this meeting, he is the traitor." "All right," Michael said. "Set it up." The trap was set. But this time the Corleones weren't the prey. They were the hunters. Michael had a plan, a master stroke. He would settle all family business in one day, in 1 hour. It was the day of his nephew's baptism. Michael stood at the altar of the old cathedral. He was the godfather. He held the baby in his arms. The priest spoke in Latin. The incense smoke rose, thick and holy. "Michael," the priest asked, "do you renounce Satan?" "I do renounce him," Michael said. His voice was soft. Cut to a hotel room. Clemenza walked up the stairs. He was carrying a box of flowers. He knocked on a door. Stracci, another Don, opened it. Clemenza pulled a shotgun from the box. Boom! Stracci flew back, his chest a ruin. "And all his works?" "I do renounce them," Michael said. Cut to a revolving door at a courthouse. Mo Green, the casino owner who had slapped Fredo, was getting a massage. A gunman kicked the door open. He fired. The bullet hit Mo Green in the eye, shattering his glasses, drilling into his brain. "And all his pomps?" "I do renounce them." Cut to a motel. Tartaglia was in bed with a prostitute. The door burst open. Machine guns stuttered. The sheets turned red. Cut to the steps of the courthouse. Barzini was walking down, confident, surrounded by bodyguards. Al Neri, Michael's new enforcer, was dressed as a policeman. He pulled a gun. He shot the bodyguards. Barzini tried to run. Neri dropped to one knee, ideally calm. Pop, pop, pop. Barzini tumbled down the stone steps, dead before he hit the bottom. In the church, the baby cried. Michael kissed the child. "Michael Corleone, go in peace." The baptism of fire was over. The heads of the 5 families were dead. The traitor Tessio was led away to his execution. Tell Mike it was only business. I always liked him. Carlo Rizzi, the man who beat Connie, the man who set up Sonny, was strangled in a car while Michael watched. Michael walked back into his house. The house was quiet. The war was over. He had won. Kay was there. She was hysterical. Connie had told her. Connie had screamed that Michael killed her husband. "Is it true?" Kay asked. Her eyes were pleading. "Michael, is it true?" Michael looked at her. He stood in his office. The blinds were drawn. "Don't ask me about my business, Kay." "I need to know," she begged. "Just this once. Ask me. Tell me." Michael paused. He looked at the woman he had married, the woman who represented the life he had lost. "No," he said. Kay exhaled. She believed him, or she wanted to believe him. She left the room to get a drink, but she looked back. Through the open door, she saw men entering the office. Clemenza, Al Neri, Rocco. They approached Michael. They didn't slap him on the back. They didn't call him Mikey. They kissed his hand. "Don Corleone," Clemenza said. Kay watched as Al Neri reached for the door handle. He looked at her. His face was a stone wall. He closed the door. The screen went black, but the darkness remained.